Welcome to LOA Today. I'm Walt Thiessen.
With me today is life coach and LOA teacher Joel Elston.
This is your daily dose of happy. We are so happy you decided to join us today.
And for those of you who are among the very small minority looking at the video of this, you'll wonder where my video image is. And honestly, I'm wondering the same thing. But for whatever reason, I don't seem to want to show up on screen today. So you're going to enjoy looking at the lovely visage of my friend Joel Elston throughout the show. And you'll hear my voice. And the rest of you who listen to the podcast only, you won't know the difference anyway, except that I just told you. But Joel is just like, this is something that happens periodically. We get these crazy technology things, and they just happen.
Yeah, I will go out on a limb and say the world will not be drastically altered by this event.
You think?
Yeah, I'm going to go out there.
All right. Well, then I feel a little bit better about it.
Yeah, good. Yeah. I think we're fine.
That's a good thing. So, how you doing, my friend?
Fantastic. How are you? It sounds like we were talking before the show, and you've been real busy the last week.
Yeah, you could say the last.
Yeah.
I've been dealing. Of course, listeners will know a year ago is when my ex-wife left me, and I went through all that craziness. And there was also an episode about 8 years before that where a whole bunch of craziness happened all at once. And then in both of those cases, most things pretty much worked themselves out within a matter of weeks. In a few cases, in a matter of months. Well, the same things happened this past week. All these crazy things are happening. But the difference is this time around, okay, I'm just kind of waiting to see how it's going to play out. I'm not worried about it, which is a nice shift from the past. Because in the past, I'd be worried about it. And now I'm not worried about it. Now it's like, okay, this is curious.
Yeah, it's amazing how that will work. And, the more times it happens, the more you can expect it. And then you truly just get to the point of, in fact, I'm to the point now, I'm like, I'm really interested to see how this works out. I have no idea.
Right.
I know it's going to work out. It'll probably work out in some magical way. So, okay.
Yeah, exactly. There was a movie that came out a few years back called, what was it called? It was from India. The Best Exotic Marigold Hotel. That's what it was. And there was a line from that movie that really summarized it very well. It said, everything will be all right in the end. And if it's not all right, well, it's not yet the end.
It's not the end. Yes, that's fantastic. I love that line. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a good line. So anyway, this topic that we're going to discuss today, it kind of came to me in two ways. First of all, I've been doing some research for myself and the idea came up through the research. And then I thought to myself, I've known Joel now for 12 years. Why have we never talked about this? Because you're you're Mr. Workout. I mean, you love going to the gym. And we've never talked about this aspect. It's kind of mind blowing, but we're going to do it today. We're going to talk about muscle. We're going to talk about is it important? Why is it important? And what should we do about it?
Oh yeah. Well, I am on a very intense social media break right now. So until you just told me that topic, I have yet to see it. So
is that right? Oh my goodness. Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
So I'm really glad you chose me to make this because this is one of my wheelhouses. So,
well, the topic I titled it today, "Muscle is Life."
Yes.
Discuss.
Yes.
So in other words, that's the proposition. That's like the topic of debate. Is it true that muscle is life, and how do we know, and what do we do about it? That's where we're starting.
Okay, so let me get rolling if it's okay. There's a lot of, as you can imagine, there's a million little rabbit holes here, but let's start with the main concept of muscle mass in general. When humans hit roughly mid-30s, it could be a little before, a little after, the increase in muscle mass ceases and the decrease in muscle mass begins. Mm-hmm. It is a natural atrophy that that's the peak time. And then every 10 years, you lose 3% of your muscle mass, roughly. Basically, the body is beginning to prepare to wrap things up, to die. You don't need to be as strong. You're past the childbearing years, the warrior. There's a lot of sort of evolutionary stuff that sort of says, okay, as we go, we need less muscle. So that process also begins a general decay of the body that can lead to reduced muscle mass is accompanied by reduced testosterone for men, reduced sex hormones for women. Women hit menopause, which changes their whole, all their hormonal makeup. And so all of these things are happening. Moods decrease, drive decreases. There's just a lot of factors that take place. So, that sounds pretty bad.
It does.
Wow, what are we going to do?
Well,
yeah.
You're describing that seriously. I mean,
Yeah.
age 30 was the marker, right? And you said 3% here. So, I'm at 66 now. So 36 times 3, that's 108. I should be dead 5 years ago.
Yeah. Well, yeah. And it's not per year, it's per decade. I'm sorry.
Per decade. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
That's better.
So,
I understand why I'm still alive. That's a good thing.
Yeah. However, of course, nature in its incredible wisdom, they give you an out. It's like, okay, it gives you an out. Say, look, that's what happens. However, if you tax the body with intense exercise, it maintains and can continue to add muscle mass. It can continue to add and grow. So exercise, one of the reasons that I'm always espousing exercise, and on this show, I'm often talking about the mental aspects of exercise, but the physical aspects of exercise, it increases your metabolism. It strengthens bone density greatly, both in men and women, postmenopausal women in particular. It has a dramatic effect.
And that's a big deal, by the way. That's a really
massive.
Yeah, because so many women,
Yeah.
overwhelmingly have bone density issues after menopause.
Absolutely.
Big deal.
And one of the leading causes of death as people get older, it's not always the final cause. It's not always what's on the death certificate, but a lot of deaths begin with people falling and getting a fracture, and that leads to decay. A lot of older people will fall and break a hip, and then they eventually die of other things. The hip wasn't really the cause, but it led to the other cause.
Right.
So not only does exercise increase bone density, which is a greatly reduced risk of fracture, it also increases your balance, and you are less likely chance of being able to fall. I mean, exercise, especially with free weight resistance, you're constantly having to stabilize. The body can maintain muscle mass. I know 90-year-old men that can bench press 225 pounds and run a couple of miles because they never stopped lifting. The body doesn't understand old. It just goes with the pre-programming. But once you defeat that by adding exercise to it, then and then of course good nutrition. There's other factors involved. You can continue to add muscle mass, well into your 90s. And the idea that there's a video. If I know we're talking about this, maybe I'll find the link and we'll post it on the page one day. They did. It's sort of a gross image, by the way. Now I think about it. There's a 90-year-old man, and they in his autopsy they had his leg. When they're showing the muscle mass in the leg, they cut the leg, and there's a tiny little average 90-year-old man, tiny little bit of muscle in the middle, followed by fat, and that was it. Then there's another man who's 90 that was a competitive bike rider, and he actually at 90 died by getting hit by a car, not by any other method. His muscle mass was massive, and it was his bone density was incredible. He would not have died if he wouldn't be hit by a car. So
right.
the idea that exercise it affects everything. Then you start adding, and I'm not going to do this with the mental stuff, but it has so many components to it. But when getting to the topic of muscle is life, it really dictates life, the quality of life, your ability to stand up, sit down, be functional, be able to do things, go on long walks. Your muscle mass and the ability to keep it as long as possible is the ultimate anti-aging concept. I'm 61 years old, and last week, and I'm saying this in a bragging way, but last week I did a 500-pound deadlift, and that is something that my doctor, who thinks I'm ridiculous, just said. He used to say you need to stop doing that. That's ridiculous.
Really?
You couldn't. Yeah. He used to say that. He said that's just too much weight. He's reversed himself now after seeing what's happened, and he's going, don't stop. He said just keep doing this.
Wow.
He said, and so it is. I find it really fascinating that once you do it enough, you'll love it. I am very, as I said, I'm in the gym every day. I eat well. I have a lot of stuff going on for me that I I'm a very big believer in fitness, but resistance training, adding to the muscle mass, and the value of muscle mass is a great indicator of longevity. And when you become, easily fractured, or you're able to, those things are when you get very frail in life. You can maintain muscle mass and never be frail. And that's just a fascinating topic to me. And most people, believe that there's a certain age you can't do that or whatever. And studies have shown there's 100-year-old people that are doing resistance training that are increasing their muscle mass. So it can happen at any point in time.
Yeah, no doubt at all. And like I said, we haven't really talked about this in detail on the program before, but you and I have talked privately over the years. And I've told you I've never really been a gym person. I'm into dance, so that's my biggest activity, and walking and such. And I've been doing some light exercise too, but I have been giving a lot of thought, partly through episodes that we've done here on the show with you and with others. I've had other guests on who are into longevity and so forth. And partly just because I'm at that point in my life where I want to maximize my own life because, well, first of all, I'm one of the lucky few. I have longevity on both sides of my family. Mm. So on my mom's side, my great grandmother lived to 108. And on my father's side, my father's brother is still alive at 107. So I've got it on both sides. So I figure, well, yes, I'm probably going to be around for a while. It probably would be a good idea if I was healthy the whole time. Otherwise, I'll be miserable. So yes, let's aim at the health part. So that's why I've been personally interested in it. And I've been doing a number of things to improve that. But that, among other things, is what led me to doing research that found this particular phrase, muscle is life. And as I was reading an article about it, I was reminded, I actually saw a physician last November, shortly after the breakup with Louise. I wanted to do a little, basically take a yardstick. Where am I at health-wise and so forth, and came through it pretty good. But she was also one who used that same phrase, muscle is life, and it kind of stuck with me. And so I think I've actually become something of a disciple of your viewpoint that, I should be spending more of giving more of my attention to, okay, where's my muscle mass at and what can I do about it? And one of the things I'm learning is you don't actually have to do a lot. You have to do that. That's probably the most important part.
Yeah. I tend to do more than likely than is necessary, but that's pretty much the theme of my life. So, that, but people can have great success 3 or 4 times a week, 30, 45 minutes a time there's even less than that, there's cardio, which is, running and stuff like that's good for the body, but muscle mass needs to be challenged with resistance. Mm-hmm. And that can be done, 3 or 4 sets of an exercise of each body part. It's all you need to do. It maybe 2 sets even. And there's the beautiful thing in this information world we live in, there are countless quality people online giving away free advice and routines on how to do that. So that's spectacular. But you mentioned something, the longevity concept within your family. And I'm really glad, parts of my family live a long time. Some of them have other issues that don't allow that to happen, but it wasn't due to, health. It was mental health. But the idea that I don't care if I'm 107. I would like to be that way. I want to be a strong 107. Exactly. I don't want to be, I have zero desire, and this is not critical of anyone else, but I do not want to be bedridden. I don't want to be dependent on anyone. Right. I want to be strong. And I know, as I said, I know 90-year-olds that are incredibly fit and their brain's intact. Everything's good. It's all connected. And there's also, when you work your muscle mass, there's a difference when you do cardio. The body releases chemicals that are anti-anxiety, antidepressant, they feel really good. There's several of the chemicals that are released. And I don't know I haven't had a chance to really get this studied or talk to anybody about this. Resistance training has a different feel to it. It's to me a deeper relaxation, a more effective antidepressant, because the muscles themselves, as you're working them, they're actually being torn down, and as you're doing that, I would think that would make your mood worse. But there's something about that release, because the process, they immediately start to be rebuilt.
Yeah.
It feels invigorating. It feels like life. So I feel that like every day of my life, I'm not kidding when I say I'm shocked that I feel this good at my age.
Mm-hmm.
I feel better mentally and physically than I did when I was 31. So and I attribute that to, well, also not doing crazy life that I was doing then, but
That helps too. Yeah.
that does help. Yeah.
Yeah.
But with everything I have going on, I think I mentioned I work out every morning. I have it set aside. Uh, it's not negotiable. I'm at the gym. It is just something that's penciled in every day of my life. I never make a decision that, oh, do you think you should go to the gym today? I get up, do my stuff, go to the gym every day. And so it's just built in. And it's probably the greatest thing that it's way past a decision now. It's just part of my life. And it's probably the greatest thing that I've ever added. I've always told you, I think I wouldn't be alive today if I didn't have access to exercise and the knowledge of muscle and the value, because it does feel that way. And it does feel, and it's not necessarily about going around and flexing muscle. I don't mean necessarily show off muscle, but just having the strength and the ability to do and be able to not have to be my neighbor, the young guy. One day he had this big, huge rock in the back of the yard. And he called and he said, I can't budget. Will you come move my rock for me? And I'm laughing that my 30-year-old neighbor asked me to come move his 300-pound rock. And he said, do you need me to help you or will I just be in the way? I said, you'll be in the way. And so there's benefits to that, but there's nothing I'm more passionate about than the benefits of exercise for children, for adults, for any age. Females for a long time were worried about getting bulky, and look, that doesn't happen. You can make that happen if you want to, but you can. You can tone up. Muscle is life. Muscle does represent growth. The body responds to that growth. And there's also a chemical that is released. And I forget the name of the chemical. Didn't know they were doing this show, or I would have remembered it. Look it up. But when your muscle atrophies, it releases the same chemical in a tiny amount that does when you die, and the muscles start to quickly deteriorate and just sort of go away.
Okay.
So there's a theory that chemical may contribute to, depression and malaise as people age, but that's still an early theory. But it would make sense as the muscle decays. It affects your mood. But by not allowing the muscle, it's decaying a little bit, but the constant work keeps it going, keeps everything. The body responds as it is required to respond. It doesn't understand any of this. There's pre-programming, but there's also workarounds from that pre-programming. So it's a fascinating concept.
It really is a fascinating concept. It's also fascinating to me, just from a practical day-to-day basis, what a difference exercise makes. Because lately I've been dealing with some minor issues. I don't know if I told you about it, but around last February, March, something like that, I started getting a pain in my right Achilles tendon, and I've been going to a physical therapist about it. And it wasn't any particular thing that I did. It was something that kind of deteriorated over time. So she's been helping me retrain my body to, use muscles that were not being used and basically build the whole thing up so I won't have that issue. And I actually over the weekend had a secondary thing came up. I tweaked a knee, so I'll be talking to her about that tomorrow. But one of the things that has come out of that is whenever I find myself doing something active, like for instance, I'm into dance. I do lots of dancing. I'm doing 2, 3, 4 times a week. And I'm at the activity. I'm involved in it. I feel good. I feel really, really good. If I get a walk in, I feel really, really good. Lately, like I said, I've been doing some light exercise. I feel good when I do that. When I'm not doing the activities, I feel the difference.
Yes.
I mean, it's not like I'm so depressed or anything like that, but I can tell. I mean, my whole mood is lower than it was when I'm doing the activities. So that's one of those things where you get instant feedback. You don't often get that in life, I mean, there are a lot of things that, it takes a long time before you finally realize, something is improving or something's deteriorating. Not with activity, not with muscle use. It's pretty quick.
It really is. And if you were to take a Prozac, for example, for depression, if it were going to work, it would take they say 3 to 4 weeks to get to a blood level where you would be
Really?
able to
Okay.
tell if it's working. If you go do a heavy workout and exhaust yourself, there's going to be a euphoria that's immediate after that. Now, I do admit it's not sustained a long time, but it gives you a break from the depression and it does lift your mood overall. And, there are several studies, and I don't want to get controversial, but there's a lot of studies that indicate that exercise is far more effective than antidepressants for
Wow.
depression and anxiety. And there's also some studies saying the other way too. So I don't want to
Okay, I got it.
get into that. But of course, you know which side I tend to lean on.
Gee, I wonder which one it might be. Give me a moment on this one.
Yeah, exactly. But the premise that and I'm not trying to judge other people. I just don't understand why people aren't in the gym all the time. It's like one of the greatest gifts. One of the bills that I'm trying to sponsor in Virginia is during the pandemic they shut down the gyms, and 12-step meetings and supports things and stuff like that. And so I have a representative I'm working with right now that wants to introduce a bill that gyms and support groups and all that cannot be shut down if a doctor says they're necessary for mental and physical health. It's something that I wish were in place. And ironically, during COVID, people that were in gyms, crowded gyms, had the least, that they were a very small group of people that contracted COVID.
Yeah.
Because it's a healthy group of people within the gym that tend to, and so there's a lot of things that we have the benefit exercise, but your immune system is greatly increased with that. I think I've told you any major decision I have to make in life is, usually I go to the bench for the major ones, but just daily decisions. I won't make any decision until post workout.
Oh, really?
That's my clearest mindset.
Okay.
And so I'll write stuff down, put it on usually a note on my phone, and I will, after my workout, I'll review those questions and say, okay, this is how I feel about that. And it serves me real well because that's my optimal mindset. It's my most focused mindset. And it serves me well. So it plays such a large role in my life that, and in my client's life, I have many clients that will attest to, everything helps a little, but exercise is the cornerstone for many people in their recovery and their well-being. Also, doctors report that people who are very muscular and active and work out regularly have a much faster recovery time from surgeries. They have a increased immune response, and they're not as sick as long as the average person. And those are all benefits.
It makes a lot of sense to me. It makes sense on a number of different levels. One of the things that I've been kind of reflecting on periodically in my own life over the last, we'll say over the last year since the marriage breakup, I would say specifically over the last 5 or 6 months, has been on a phrase that was uttered by Esther Hicks voicing Abraham. And I don't remember what the exact phrase is, so this is a paraphrase, but the gist of it was this. This is Abraham speaking. Esther has a plan for her life. Her plan for her life is to go live, attract, go live, go attract, go live, die. In other words, she wants to just be going until the very, very end and then drop dead and transition back to not physical. And every time I think about that, I say, wow, that's the ultimate way to live. That's the ultimate life, because you're basically living the whole life. Like you talked about, you didn't really want to be in decline at like 107 and you can't get through the day and all that kind of stuff. And I'm with you on that. I feel exactly the same way about that. And there's no reason why we have to be that way. We can be totally active. One of the things, though, that I think is probably our most difficult challenge, I'll put it that way, I'm curious to know what your take is on this, is, and this is something that psychologists have noted for years. Carl Jung is known for having mentioned this in his writings. There is a societal belief in decay and death after a certain age. What that certain age is going to be varying from person to person. But there's like this overwhelming belief that once you're over the hill, it's all downhill from there and everything just falls apart. Yes. And so those of us who want to take on a mindset that says, I'm going to just go for it until, the very end and then I'll be done. That's an extra challenge that we're basically kind of, in a sense, wrestling against what society is teaching us. I mean, when you deal with it, how do you think of that in your own? I mean, I suspect the fact that you go to the gym every day probably helps negate that. But how do you deal with that?
One of the things that I look at, and and this is a good strategy using law of attraction in general. I find people who are the exception to that concept. Like I said, 90-year-old people that look incredible. They're lucid. They're very active. They can bench press 225 pounds. They can run 5 miles. I look to that and say that doesn't apply to that person. So there's at least one. Now there's two, me, that are going to do that. So I find people that sort of the Roger Bannister theory. He broke the 4-minute mile. So I find people that broke that theory, and then that doesn't apply to them. So it doesn't apply to me. If you leave everything alone, the natural order is decay. That that's programmed to me now. I don't know if I could unprogram that. I do have a belief that I can reprogram it through exercise. I can defeat it through exercise. So my remedy is there. Esther says that, or Abraham said that, about the live, 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 die. It is a joke to all my clients, or actually a fact. People believe this. If you read one day, I died, it will be in the gym or at my office.
Yes, I'm sure.
Yeah. And the joke at the gym, and everybody laughs, after me doing a 500-pound deadlift the other day, the guy's like, man, are you worried that's bad for you? And I go, look, if I die, I said, you need to add 100 pounds to this bar and then call the ambulance. I said, because I want the story to be he died with a 600-pound deadlift. I said, I need everybody in the gym on board with that story. And, of course, they all love that. But I'm not, I'm not really worried about the weight, but I do. Right. When like, here's an example. I mentioned to you, I have a minor procedure coming up on Thursday, and it's a silly minor procedure, but I am going to have to go under. So I had a pre-surgical physical the other day. Mm-hmm. And so I explained anytime I have a thing to that, because of my weightlifting, I have a couple of things that are always anomalous on my a blood test. Oh. So when I didn't know I was having a blood test. So after I work out, their muscle enzymes, as you kill muscle, as you destroy muscle, they release, and they're the same markers that are in your liver. So ALT and AST, the enzymes in the liver, are elevated slightly every time after I work out. They're not. It's not the liver, but it looks like it's from the liver, from what most doctors understand. And also from 40-something years of working out, I have an athletic heart. It's an enlarged heart, but it's an athletic heart. Right. So it'll show up in my ECG as an enlarged heart.
Got it.
So I tell them that beforehand, that, look, you're going to see elevated liver enzymes. It's no big deal. And you're going to see an enlarged heart. It's an athletic heart. It's been looked at. Every time I have one of these, everybody freaks out. It's fine. And so sure enough, the lady comes in who did the EKG. She goes, oh, I got to get a doctor to look at that. I go, it's an enlarged heart. I know it is. And I try to explain it to her. It's so anomalous that, and of course the lady comes in, she said, of course your liver enzyme. I said, it's not liver enzymes, but yes, the markers are elevated. So I have to have my body responds differently. I'm in perfect health, but my heart has enlarged to address for 40 years I've put that. So it gets stronger and bigger. And it's normal in a lot of intense athletes and stuff. Runners have the same thing. It's not unusual, but the body does adapt, and it comes up with new strategies. It's like your joints and stuff. They respond to exercise as long as you're using good form. All of this stuff is just it's so fascinating to me that it exists, and nobody. I've given this example before, and I say this on the show, and I think most of our listeners will understand what I'm saying with this. There's nobody who loves life more than me, and nobody that's more prepared for death than me. I don't know if that makes any sense, but
it does. Sure.
Yeah. I love life. I want to live, but also, if I wake up, next, and I'm sitting across from my son TJ, going, "Hey, what's up?" I'm fine with that too. I'm not. And living that way where as long as I'm healthy and feeling this way and my cognitive function is in play, I want to live as long as possible. That's fantastic. It's great. And, but at the same time, whatever happens, I'm good with, because you know how I believe is I'll be back, sort of Arnold said, I'll be back. But this is the whole concept of, I can't remember the number, but I heard this doctor, he's a cardiologist, and he was saying, if people were to exercise intensely and eat relatively well, not perfectly, just relatively well, something like 90% of the people go to the hospital for things that would be cured by doing that.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
It is amazing. And it's something that, we've had many guests on the program over the years who bring in some kind of a medical related story. Some of them are actually doctors. Some of them are people who've just been through their own medical experiences. They've learned from them and they wanted to share their experiences with others and say, hey, you do the same kind of thing. You can beat cancer. You can beat heart disease. You can beat, whatever it might be. You get enough of those coming through and you begin to realize, first of all, the whole idea of human health is a lot bigger than what Western medical science has to say about it. Second of all, it's actually even bigger than what Eastern medical science has to say about it.
Completely agree.
I don't think we even have a full handle on it yet. But the more that I look at it, the more I realize health. I think Abraham had it right. Abraham basically has said, if this sounds bizarre. I mean, the first time I heard this, I said, yeah, what are you talking about? But they said there's really no reason for a human being to die other than the fact that human beings expect to die.
Yes. I concur with that. And I also believe there's sort of a theory that, I can imagine after a certain period of time saying, okay, I need a new experience. Let's wrap this one up. I can imagine after 100 and something years, okay, I've done a lot of this, so maybe it's time to get a new experience. But, I have seen evidence. I've seen people, that again, very old people that exercise, they're phenomenal shape. Their brains are in phenomenal shape. And number one, they have an expectation of health. They have an expectation that I'm going to get up every day and go to the gym. I also am not going to be worried by every little ailment or every little thing. It's just, you're going to pass, it's going to pass. It's like,
right.
The other day, there's this guy at the gym and he's really in good shape. He's probably about 55, good guy. And he goes, oh man, I've been having some shoulder pains. And I go, yeah. And then he said, yeah, my knee, like 3 or 4 complaints. I'm like, okay, you're here. So, are we going to just sit here and bitch about all this? Or are we going to, what? And he laughed. And I said, because that's just, you're focusing on what's wrong. Look at how strong you are. Look at the stuff you're doing. Yeah. You're stronger than people much longer. I'm sorry your boo-boo hurts on your shoulder, but why don't we just get, he laughed. And he goes, I got to remember to quit bitching to you. And I go, yes, you do.
Well, more importantly, he's got to remember to quit bitching to himself, really. I mean, because actually, that's the person he's harming the most. He doesn't really harm you at all when he does.
Yeah. And so, the idea that the expectation of health is, we hear this all the time. And there's tons of stories of the science of this, the expectation of health, the dictates health, the expectation of just the longevity. I just don't have any, I have no idea, obviously, how I'm going to die. I do plan on dying at some point. I don't know how it'll be. I would be great if it were spectacular. I mean, I don't know exactly what that means, but whatever it's going to be, I don't want to rot away. It's not going to be a rotting event. I'm hopeful for, it's
that long, slow decline. There's nothing appealing about that.
No. And, within it though, and the best way to deal with that is to increase your muscle mass. And also people that are very worried about, I lift weights now. I'm not worried about appearance or all that anymore. I just like being strong. Mm-hmm. But people that are really want to still focus on, how my body looks or whatever that's going on with that. The fastest way to lose body fat is to increase your muscle mass. It increases the metabolism and eats the fat. Mm. So it's a reverse effect. I was talking to this fitness person. She's an incredible internet personality. She's very strong, one of the strongest people I know, whether she's a woman or not. And she believes in eating well, quality food, a lot of it, and working very hard. She has no
Mm-hmm.
body fat. She has a lot of muscle. She's very strong. And that is an incredible way to live.
Yeah.
And, it's a choice because her expectation of health is there. We were commenting the other day that, neither one of us are ever sick. It's just, we're never
Mm-hmm.
sick.
Mm-hmm.
And, when I'm like, they know I'm having this procedure on Thursday. They said, how many days are you going to be out? And I go, I'm anticipating 0. I don't know. I mean, I can't imagine I'm missing a day for a teeny little thing like that. And they laughed and said, well, maybe you need to take a day. And I go, we'll see. But one of the biggest things to be having surgery, I'm like, I'm not going to be out of the gym long. And my doctor's like, no, this is a very minor thing. So I'm hoping that I'm always advocating for muscle density, muscle growth, muscle improvement because of what it brings to the whole package of the human experience. Also, on a side note, we don't have many children listeners here, I'm sure, but parents that are reluctant to allow their kids to work out because they heard some arbitrary number that working out before 12 is unhealthy or before puberty is unhealthy, and that's just not the case. Now, to be honest with you, you want to make sure if kids are doing resistance training, they're doing it with proper form. They can't injure themselves by screwing around with it.
Sure.
But proper form, there's nothing better with a kid with anxiety or me. In my case, I had a lot of body image issues because I was such a skinny little 12-year-old. Weightlifting cured that for me. So I advocate for the use of resistance training for whoever wants to resistance train, as long as proper form is used. And that goes for anybody, but particularly children who their bones are not totally sealed off. They're still growing. So improper form could damage those growth plates. But if you are supervising, make sure the form's perfect, not lifting too much weight, there's nothing better you can start them on than lifting weights.
I like that. One of the things that I've been learning a lot about, because I've been seeing this physical therapist about my Achilles issue and now a knee issue, is just how interconnected everything is inside the human body. I mean, I think we all kind of know that on some level, but right. I'm really coming to appreciate, you do this and it affects that. It's like, oh, wait a minute, what does that have to do with this? Well, it's all interconnected. Yeah. And because it's all interconnected, one of the things I'm thinking about where muscle is concerned is, all right, if we're building muscle, or at least maintaining muscle, depending on what level of activity we're involving ourselves in, if we're in that process of doing muscle related stuff, it must be, as long as we're following good form, because you just made that very important point, as long as we're following good form, it must also be positively affecting the other parts of the body, the ligaments, Absolutely. The tendons. In fact, I was maybe you know this, I didn't know this. When you actually look beneath the skin, which by the way, I don't want to do because it grosses me out, but if you look beneath the skin at muscles going into, say, the calf muscles, and I guess there are about 6 or 7 of those muscles that are all layered together. We call them the calf muscle. Going into the tendon, you can't actually see where the calf muscle ends and the tendon begins. It's almost like tendon is an extension of muscle. Yes. So it just kind of reinforces how, it's not only all interconnected, it's almost hard to tell stuff apart because it is so similar in the way the structures. I mean, we call things ligaments and tendons and muscles and bones and so forth, but anatomically speaking, there are a lot of similarities between these pieces. So it just Absolutely. Makes sense to me that, if we're working on muscle, we're probably working on all of it.
You are. Well, when we're talking muscle today, but exercise strengthens the tendons, the ligaments, all the support. There's tiny muscles in the body that you don't even know you're working, and they're
I've been learning about those, by the way.
Yeah. And is your Achilles and the knee on the same leg?
Yes.
That's very common because there's an old analogy, and I don't think cars. I'm really stupid when it comes to cars, so I'm sorry. But a long time ago, I had a car that had 3 belts in it. And one of those belts broke. I was a kid, and so I didn't have much money, and I went to the shop to get it fixed, and the belt was like $6, and then he was going to charge me $20 to put it on. And he goes, "But if I were you, I would change all the belts at once." And I go, "Well, you just want more money." And I thought to myself, and he explained. He said, "Well, you're gonna put on a strong belt, and those other belts are going to get pressure, and it'll speed up, and one of those belts will probably, so it's better to replace them all." That actually made sense to me. We replaced them all.
Sure.
So when you have one area of the body that is damaged, and it can be opposite sides too, because there could be a compensation reason, but you tend to, like, I used to have an elbow problem and a shoulder problem on the same, and it's like they never happen at the same time, but it's like, okay, there's obviously a connection here,
right.
between where that pain was. And so when you're, with your Achilles going on, it's not shocking that the knee, it got tweaked a little bit because there was a compensation for the Achilles, likely.
Right.
And you see that also when somebody will damage like your Achilles on your left foot, and you're having to wear a boot or whatever, then the right side will have a problem because the balance is off. So everything is connected. There's also a lot of studies, and you get in a really deep rabbit hole of the muscles. They're communicated. Obviously, if I'm just sitting here and I say raise my pinky, I instantly raise my pinky. All that electrical system travels down to engage the muscles instantaneously.
Right.
When something startles you and your eyes blink, the muscles that are involved with that, they take place subconsciously. You could never close your eyes fast enough for that. So the speed in which all that transmits through the nerves, and the muscles are a conduit of that. So they're looking at all these signaling things within the body. So the skin is the largest organ in the body. That most people don't realize, because it covers the whole body, obviously.
Right.
The muscle network may be the important, and you can't say the most important. The electrical network is all part of it, but the integration of muscle plays a far greater role in the integration of the electrical system than they realize. And if you ever put a little electro on like a muscle of a frog you dissected, and the frog's leg jumps, that's the electrical connection making the leg jump, the muscle jump. So that's all taking place in the body, and the muscles roll in that. For a long time, it was thinking that the premier thing, the standard thinking was the electrical system signaling the muscle, and it's still the standard way. But there's discoveries that muscles are playing a different role, or a more important role. And I'm waiting to see those studies to really dissect exactly what they're saying. But muscle mass is life. It's not just life, it's quality of life that we're talking about here. And that's one of my favorite topics. So I'm so glad we're talking about that.
Yeah. Well, like I said, it's about time we did talk about it. Now, you just raised a couple of points that I wanted to address here, that I think are kind of important. One point is that, you mentioned how there's the kind of the nervous system, the electrical system in the body that transmits, nerve, it transmits energy that says, okay, here's something that has to go on. There's a fascinating thing about that. And I mentioned this in part because I think there's also a very real spiritual component that goes on here. And you'll see what I mean in a moment. When scientists measure the ability of a nerve to transmit an electrical signal, especially if it's a long signal, like going from the brain to the toe or something like that, there's actually a considerable delay in terms of how long it takes for the signal to get there. And yet, as you point out, I mean, somebody steps on your toe, you don't have to wait 3 seconds before you go, ouch. It's instantaneous. And I don't know that physicians have actually, or scientists have actually figured out why this happens, but for whatever reason, we are able to detect that we're able to transmit that signal faster than the nervous system can actually send it. Which is an odd thing. That's really interesting,
Well, when you have all your senses in play when you're doing that, like depending on the speed, if you touch a hot stove, there's a slight signal delay from the heat being transmitted to the brain, just slight. But there's also the sight of touching a hot stove.
Yeah.
That's you're bypassing that nerve. Your eyes just saw that happen, so it's moving faster. Or the sound of the sizzle when you hit the stove, that little, and so that's what some of these studies are taking into account now. Certainly the nervous system, the electrical system is what's doing it all, but there's also supporting systems that even speed it up. And that's what I was talking about, these studies about the muscle being, in fact, an important role within that. It's not just some group of things that move everything. There's an energy within them that is, and that's what they're trying to get more. They're trying to quantify more. So like you're saying, that it moves faster when you see an event, or because your eyes are measuring it in, like this, basically the speed of light, and then your body responds, quicker than the distance it would have to travel from the toe or the finger up to the brain. So that all that is connected, and also and I'm always talking about energy connections with people, and the idea that all of this stuff is we're always transmitting energy to other people and receiving energy, good, bad, ugly, or whatever we're doing with it. But there's always an energy exchange, and I've heard the theory that all systems of the body are sending energy as well. The muscle system, the electrical system. So it isn't just this one signal coming out. There's multiple signals at play here. And so, again, I think the science of muscle and its connectivity to other things, like one of the things that fascinated the big study several years ago was when we realized that gut health played a big role in mental health, and that just blew people away.
Yeah,
because a lot of the brain chemicals are actually created within the gut, and that was something that that was sort of like, wow, really? They kept testing that. Yeah, and so they're having similar epiphanies with muscle and its role in other things, and the idea of the decay of muscle or the growth of muscle, or the fascinating thing that I find with muscle. There's I may have shared this with you. There's always stories about the lady that picked her car up and took it off of her kid that was trapped under it, and those are real stories that happened. But I had a client that was in a car wreck, and she wasn't my client at the time, but I was brought in because after 6 months she was paralyzed from the waist down, and there was no medical reason why she was paralyzed.
Oh,
and they, at one point, a doctor was saying, I think it might be, psychological. And she went to see a psychiatrist, and he's like, look, we could, I don't have any way to quantify this. He said, why don't you talk to Joel? He knows. So she said, that's how I ended up with this client. So I started talking with her. I'd go visit at her house. She had a beautiful home. Had this nice indoor pool, and her bedroom was upstairs and overlooked that pool. And so she wasn't faking. She had to have help getting up. So one day her grandson was over. He was like 2, and her daughter was downstairs getting some stuff together for her to bring upstairs. She was getting the food to bring up. Well, apparently she heard this loud commotion downstairs, and her daughter had fallen and like dislocated her hip or broke her. I forget what the story, but couldn't move.
Wow.
And so she's screaming up to her mom I've fallen. I need you to call 911. I can't get up, and I know you can't come down here. Simultaneously, the mom heard a splash in the pool.
Oh my.
The 2-year-old kid who can't swim fell in the pool.
Right.
She jumps out of bed, jumps over the balcony.
Wow.
Kid's out of her pool, walks in the room, helps her daughter up, and dials 911.
Wow.
What happened there? Her first text to me was, I guess I'm not paralyzed. She explained what happened. But
the understatement of the year.
Yeah. But the system at play overrode whatever was blocking all that. So the psychological stuff that was blocking those muscles from engaging was defeated by her motherly instincts and grandmotherly instinct. She saved her grandson, picked her daughter off of it, and never had a problem again. It cured, because whatever electrical system flew through all that, it cleared it out. She no longer had the mental block that couldn't happen anymore. And boom, there we are.
That's fabulous.
Yeah.
It's one of those stories you hear it and you say, wow, did that really happen? But
yeah.
If I didn't know you, I would have doubted it, but I know you, so it must have happened.
Yeah. I was like, you jumped over the rail? I mean,
yeah.
I thought your muscles would be too active. I had no explanation. She goes, look, there was no thinking involved. I didn't have time. And she was very, very sore, and she still, she had to go through physical therapy because her muscle had atrophy. But that burst of 3 minutes of energy just, it just was overridden with all this stuff. And so again, it's all connected. The brain, the muscle, the mind-body connection, the mind-muscle connection. It is real. And there's also studies that we've talked about other law of attraction theories. Like if you envision yourself exercising your bicep, for example, you're exercising your bicep, you envision that, you watch it happen. And you have a group that's actually exercising the bicep, and you have a group that's doing nothing. Now, obviously, the real exercise bicep stuff grows the most.
Sure.
But shockingly, substantially, and statistically relevant, the thinking about muscle growth makes the muscle grow than those who do nothing.
Yeah, that's really that makes you stop and think for a moment. In fact, there was actually a novel by one of the original science fiction fathers of science fiction, Robert Heinlein, and the particular novel was called what was it called? Stranger in a Strange Land. It was a story of a human who ends up being born on Mars. And in this sci-fi world, Mars has actual Martian life, and the Martian life raises this human, and then he comes back to Earth, and he's interacting with humans on Earth. And at one point early on in the story, he's visited by a doctor, and the doctor is asking him about, his bodily health and so forth. And then the doctor visits him a week later, and his muscle mass is increased by like 50%. Mm-hmm. And the doctor asks him, what did you do? Have you been working out? He says, no. Well, how did you grow your muscles? He says, I thinked them. And I read that, and bear in mind, I read this like 30 years ago. And I read that, I said, yeah, right.
Yeah.
This is clearly science fiction going on here.
Yeah, it's hilarious because it's relevant today. And again, there's been countless studies backing that up. This isn't an anomalous study. A lot of pro golfers that I've worked with, and I've heard this from other pro golfers too, they literally will, the night before, they'll play an entire couple of rounds of golf mentally at the course they're playing. They'll play at different shots, different angles after a double bogey, and they focus on their swing. And people that do that report, again, we don't have a real way to measure that, but everybody that tries it does feel that it's a very helpful tool to visualize. And again, muscle memory, teaching the muscle to do that. One of the things that happens a lot in the NFL or any sport, but I don't really consider baseball a sport, as you know. So we won't talk about that.
We'll have that debate another day.
Yeah, I know.
We've had it many days, actually.
Yeah. I always have to get that in. Sorry. But when a kicker, automatic, greatest kicker in the league, automatic every time, boom, boom, 40 yards and in, field goal, every extra point. And then when they kick it off to the side one time for whatever reason, now they go through these incredible slumps. It's just because they've taken away the automatic part, and now they're trying to correct the muscle themselves. They're trying to, whatever that form is, and it can run a career. There is a baseball player that I was just reading this the other day.
Knobloch.
Yes, and you know the whole story. Then it's better. Yes. But the idea that it basically cost him his career.
It did. Yeah, he was a second baseman playing for the New York Yankees, and he reached a point where suddenly he could not complete a throw straight to the first baseman on a ground ball. and it would go
Wow.
flying into the stands. It would go into the outfield. It would go he just literally could not throw the ball straight, to the point where, like you said, it ultimately cost him his career. And in fact, there's a rather funny episode from the Ted Lasso Apple TV series in which they make reference to that. They make reference to Chuck Knobloch, and they're doing it in the context of one of the players who's involved in the series, because Ted Lasso is a coach of a British soccer team, or football team as it's known over there. And in that context, they talk about how, well, this has the scientific name of the yips. And as soon as they say yips, oh, no, you're not allowed to say that, because there's a whole superstition about, no, you can't call it, you can't say that word, because you're going to just convince that person to continue to do no, don't say the word.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It's a fascinating, again, all of that is connected. And, there's been multiple times. I've done this as I said, I've been in the gym forever. And one of the things I'm really grateful for, and I didn't know it as time went on, but I have met many kids in the gym that have grown into men that I respect very much, and we're lifelong friends. So, some 12-year-olds in the gym, he asked me to help him out, and over the years, now they're grown men, and so it's really cool to have a lot of my friends started in that arena. It's really cool that I don't know why it feels so organic to me, and we're very close. And so this has happened multiple times. When you start lifting weights, there's on the bench press, most people, when you get the big plates, they're 45 plates, 135 pounds is, sort of a milestone. Okay, I can bench press 135 pounds. Then 2 plates is 225 pounds, and that's a big jump. That's big boy. But not everybody makes it to 315 pounds. That's 3 plates. So 3 plates usually you've had to be lifting for a while to get there, and so. But when you get there, it's sort of a difficult thing, because mentally that's a lot of weight.
Yeah.
So one person, again, this happened multiple times. One person I'm thinking about. He's one of these kids that I've known since he was 12. He was 25, and he comes up to me one day in the gym. He said, "I really need your coaching." He said, "I can bench press 310 pounds twice, but I can't do 315 once." I go, "That doesn't make any sense. You can do 315." He goes, "I know, but I need you to critique my thing." And I said, "Okay." So I said, "Well, let me adjust the weights." I said, "You can do 310. Let me put 312 on here and do that incremental, okay?" And he goes, "I could probably get that pretty easily." So I told him I put 312 on the bench. He did it twice.
Wow.
Which is cool. Then I told him to get up and count his weight. I put 320 on the bar. He had defeated himself. And then it was just an arbitrary number that he couldn't do. It's and that's played out multiple times over the years. It's sticking points. If you can do 310 twice, you can do 315 easy. But the idea that it's that step up, and they don't realize it. So the expectation, all of this, your muscles are limited. Humans have a sort of a governor that doesn't let you put 100% of your effort out at once generally, we're like animals. The one reason animals are so brutal, they have no governor. They can expend, it's life and death for them. And so they give you 100% of everything right then. It's just, that's why an ape or something is so devastating, because there isn't anything slowing it. It's just giving you from 0 to 100 power right off the bat.
Right.
But muscle is it's more complicated than I think a lot of people realize. It's far more important than people realize. And it's not just about, flexing your arms and having big muscles. It's not about that. Muscle is life. It's about longevity. It's about quality of life more than anything else. And there's nothing, I've always said, if it weren't for me working out and all the value it brought, I don't know if I'd be talking to you today, because it has been the cornerstone of my rebuild in life, so to speak.
Yeah, I get that. And I love the fact that we are tying muscle to mind.
Yes.
You did that much earlier in the show when you made reference to Roger Bannister, who in 1954 became the first man to run a mile in less than 4 minutes, 3 minutes, 59 seconds. And up until that point in time, it was considered impossible for a human to do that. Since Roger Bannister did that, over 1,000 men have been able to replicate that. I believe the record currently is 3 minutes, 43 point something seconds.
Yeah, it's great. High school kids are breaking the 4 minute mile. Not even a thing. Yeah.
And women are almost there. Women are within 7 seconds of it now.
Yeah, they'll be there.
Yeah, so it's just going to happen at some point. But my point is, the only thing that was holding us back was our belief.
Yes.
And boy, does that really illustrate how powerful our belief is.
Well, that goes full circle to your question earlier. The belief that we're going to decay and get weak and die. One of the things I feared for a long time was the concept of getting old. It was something that, because I associated old with, decay and weak. And now, when you get to 60, a lot of people, oh, you're not old. No, it's old. 60's old, but it's not a negative old. I feel fantastic. This is not a negative to say being older has its value. A lot of the things that ruled your life, you sort of have conquered, and it's just, I feel better at 61 than I did at 31, as I said earlier. I have a better life, I have better quality of life, and my brain is much more, working together in fluid motion. It's an incredible tool to have, and it's something that I'm grateful for. The mind muscle connection is something that is still the new frontier. We still have some more to learn on that. There's going to be more developments. There's a lot of studies on that right now.
Yeah, I agree with that. I'll mention one other thing. I went to an event this past summer that was populated largely by people in their 60s and 70s. And, I was a bit in shock, to be honest, because I think it was fair to say that probably 95% of the people at that event were kind of stuck in that mindset we're talking about. Once you're over 60 or whatever, you're over the hill and you're decline, and you could hear it in their voices and the way they told what was going on with their lives and their stories. And the contrast between me and them almost scared me. I couldn't believe that these people were relatively the same age that I was, because they didn't look like it. They didn't act like it. Their physical bodies didn't show. My body's in pretty good shape. Their bodies weren't showing that. I was saying, how is this possible that we have this massive thing going on in society where the vast majority of people have a belief system that's driving their bodies into the ground? But really, that's what we've got. We've got that. So going back to one of my original questions, how do you deal with the fact that we're faced with a society that has this very strong belief that, once you're over the hill, it's all over from there. It's just, all over but the shouting. I like what you said at that point. You talked about how, I look at the exceptions. I give my attention there, because that's really the trick, so muscle is life. And we want to be building muscle, and we want to be maintaining muscle so we can have the kind of life that we want to. But I think it's also important to remember we have control over how we exercise the mental side of it too. Because really it's the combination that does it.
The combination is, today's show was on muscle, but to me, they're so connected, the mental health and the muscle, and it's so interconnected that it's you can't really discuss one without the other. But the law of attraction, supports the idea that, you believe your reality is what you believe your reality is. And, I went to one class reunion where, and it'll be the only one I ever go to, where everybody sat around talking about literally what medication they were on.
Oh my God. Ugh.
And of course they're looking at me going, I got nothing. I don't take any med. And again, I'm not upset with them. I feel sorry for it, but it's just sort of, that was their reality. And,
right.
And all they were doing is talking about complaining and this and that, and it just ailments. And I was like, wow, I'm sorry you guys are going through that. It's not my reality.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And that's the key right there. It doesn't have to be our reality.
Exactly.
We get to choose our reality. So, wow. Well, I'm glad we talked about muscle finally after some 11 years. We finally got to the topic,
We were doing.
We'll see if we can find a way to do muscle part 2 at some point. I'm not sure exactly how we'll tie it in, but, law of attraction, it'll probably just come to us at some point. I think that's the way it's going to happen.
Yes, absolutely.
So good stuff. So thank you very much, Joel. Appreciate all your insights. Thank you to our podcast listeners everywhere. We will see you all next time here on LOA Today. Goodbye, everybody.